a lot of factors, whether it's work-related, personal life-related, professionally related, hence why there's two types of people. Some lose a lot of weight when they're stressed and worried and upset and sad, as I'm sure we've all encountered. Or on the contrary, there's people who gain a lot of weight when they're worried and stressed. You probably noticed that too.
Yeah.
So again, and the reason for that is because when the hormone is released, ghrelin is telling our brain we're hungry. So what's the first reaction as a human? Because we're as creatures, as species, we don't like suffering. We want to try everything in our power to avoid suffering because we're used to comfortability, and the world has designed us in such a way that everything is about comfortability. So our brain is used to sleeping on a lovely bed. Our brain is used to having Wi-Fi. Our brain is used to having a nice warm shelter. Our brain is used to having, now imagine surviving without an iPhone. I mean, I'm thousands of miles away and we're creating this podcast. So our brains are designed and rewired to just be comfortable. And that hasn't really changed. That was the case when it comes to food too. That makes sense? I think I'm diverging a bit.
No, but I think that's good. The way you took that is a better way of explaining it, because different people like to hear it in different ways. So you give me two good examples there, which give you that idea. It's also worth mentioning that you can be really harsh on yourself and do a lot of extra exercise and push yourself to get to a point. But as a little caveat, if you're listening to this, make sure you get medical advice before you do any extreme type of change, or if you've got any underlying conditions, things like that, because not everybody can straight away do this. If you're at an extreme point where you've not done exercise for a really long time, it may be a different way of approaching it. So make sure you get your own medical advice and information about that. But as we're going through this, how do you think this health and well-being affects the career progressions? Do you feel if you're more healthy, you do better in a work environment?
So when you say healthy, do you mean when you feel healthy or do you look healthy?
Is there a difference?
So yes, again, because I think, and again, I'm very torn on this because I know people and I work with people as a trainer all the time who look healthy, but they're not actually healthy from inside. So just because you look at a lower body fat percentage or it looks like you're not overweight, it might seem like you're quite athletic and you're fit looking, but you're not actually healthy because you might be drinking, you might be smoking excessively, you might be doing a lack of any cardiovascular exercise. So if you're lacking any of these things or you've got any of these bad habits, you might look like you're not overweight, because what we do is we equate health to being slim. I think that's fair. Is that a fair parameter to say? Yeah. I think if you ask in a layman's terms, if you ask any person off the street, what do you define as healthy? They would say a person who's slim, who's not fat, not overweight, who's skinny, and that would be their definition of healthy. All right. Equally, I've got friends who are overweight by comparison. If you compare to their body fat percentage, they've got 20% plus body fat, but being boxers, they train. They have a lot of stamina. They run 4 or 5 miles a day. So they can outrun any and everybody I know, but they don't look healthy. So I think we have to be very careful and distinguish the difference between actual healthy and looking healthy and actually being healthy. All right. So I think those are two aspects which we do a lot of the time can get mixed up with. In answer to your question about does it make a difference in work? I think if we're really honest, it's a lie to say it doesn't make a difference how you look at work. Again, certainly in my 15 years of professional life, being a manager in the past, as you know, we worked in a similar company. Looks matter. First impression matters. And when I say looks, I don't mean looks in terms of a person's beauty, in terms of a person's attraction, because again, beauty is very subjective, right? So, but I think the general perception, the way the human brain is designed, is if a person looks like they look after themselves, it sets off a signal that you are well versed, you are professional, you are obviously you take into account how you look. Therefore, you are going to be on top of your work. You're going to be neat. You're going to be tidy. You're going to be tardiness makes a big difference. So again, that's not to say if you're not any of those things, you're not going to be effective at work. That's exactly the point we're talking about. You can be so effective, but not look smart or not look healthy. But I think in answer to your question, absolutely, I do think it does make a difference. Certainly when you start moving up to the upper echelons of an organizations, I think these things, you do make a difference, because now being in a senior leadership position, in an education field, absolutely, as I want my staff, I want my teachers to look a particular way. And again, is that a little bit of a disadvantage to them? Yes, but I demand high standards. And at the end of the day, I feel like if somebody looks after themselves, if they're dressed professionally, if they're dressed like they mean business, then ultimately 90% of the time they will kind of have that mindset. They will want to work hard. You would want to stay on top of your work. You're going to be, very tidy in everything that you do. So yeah, I do agree.
Expand on that a little bit there. Used to be like 20 years ago, 15 years ago, people used to wear suits all the time. Like it was like a gentleman thing to do, and they looked a lot smarter. Sure. And everybody that wore a suit got a little bit better than someone who wasn't wearing a suit. So it's more like they say that saying where you should dress for the job you want, not the job you've got. And even
absolutely,
with my progression, how we've gone through, we used to have someone at work that used to always wear tracksuits, like on dress down day, and then I used to wear like a blazer. And he had the same kind of role to start off with. But when people come through and business managers, upper level managers walk through, they'll always say, oh, who's that guy with the smart jacket? Who's that guy? And they kind of give you a boost, understanding that you're paying attention to your clothes, which means you're going to pay the same level of attention to your work as well. So that kind of gives you a wider view, and it does work. And it also lets people know that you're serious about what you want to do. So I think that's helped me a lot as well, kind of going through the journey of work and starting from the bottom and slowly working up. We've done similar things, and you've done really well as well. And you're a very smart person. So I think you're right. And that point, to reiterate, it is something that can have a big impact, looking the part.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. And again, I've been a victim of this, whereby a victim of my own ignorance, that I didn't realize the importance or the impact that this has on society. Because again, this is all about knowing the human brain, understanding the way the human psychology works. And we can argue until we're blue in the face, it's right or wrong. That's a moral issue and an ethical issue. Yeah. We're not talking about if that's a right thing or a wrong thing, because you can argue a person could look like a janitor or like a cleaner or like a person cleaning the toilets, and there could be the next Tim Cook. So that's not what's in question. We're not questioning a person's intellectual ability. But I think it's fair to say, unfortunately, it is the old saying, you should never judge a book by its cover. But the reality is, if that was true, then marketing wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
So it does matter what you look like. It does matter if the dessert and if the picture of the dessert looks horrible, you're not ordering that dessert from the restaurant. If your steak doesn't look scrumptious, you're not going to order that steak. If the designer or the style isn't being flaunted and thrown in our face continuously, you won't even know that they exist. And let me give you a perfect example of that. Is Balenciaga is a very known brand, a very well-known designer brand. And they've just done a very recently, I was reading an article about a study that they've done. And they wanted to just prove the very point I was talking about, that the mind of the human psyche goes by whatever society keeps pushing to them. So if you notice, Balenciaga, out of maybe 100 designs, 1 or 2 are maybe appealing, or 1 or 2 are good enough. Certainly, I still wouldn't wear them, but they're good enough to be like, okay, I'll wear that. I'll pass with that. The others are, in my personal opinion, again, it's very subjective, is they're quite, to be honest, they're not attractive at all. They're quite ugly to me, totally. And there's so many people I know, but because they are a known brand, because they are Balenciaga, because they are so famous, if you wear them, you feel like, wow, look at me. And everybody will be like, wow, they look amazing. So I think that when, in answer to your question about does it make a difference at work, it does, because I think when you look a particular way, you will psychologically, subconsciously start to act a particular way. You will, because that's why, and again, if you look back at all the studies, especially in the UK over the past 20 years, I mean, if you look at all the studies that have been done on dress down days, because in offices on Fridays, I think usually is a dress down day, the productivity went down. On a dress down day, the productivity went down. And it's so funny, because when I used to work in the UK many years ago, same with you, in the same organization that we worked in, Fridays was a dress down day, I remember. And in my mind, on a Thursday, I would start to switch off. I was a manager at the time. And I still had my duties to do. I still had my tasks to do. But psychologically, I would start to switch off on a Thursday. Now, looking back now, I don't think it was entirely because of my clothes or my attire, but I certainly think it did make a difference. I 100% do agree it makes a big difference. And again, I tell you how we can give a very real life example. When we go out to ride, if you're in your full leather suit and you jump on your sports bike, how is your mindset going to be compared to just wearing tracksuit bottoms, just a t-shirt and jumping on a scooter and just going for a fish and chips?
That's it. They did some research on that as well, where cyclists that wear helmets, people look at them and take more risks, but cyclists that don't wear helmets, like as in bike cyclists, people driving around them are a bit more careful that, I might hit him, he might fall off. Did like a full survey on that. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. People are treating him more safely because he's not wearing a helmet, but he should be wearing a helmet for himself. So it's like there's a lot of how that works out, but it's right. You're in interesting area that.
So I think that's a different topic altogether. That's certainly I'm not experienced or qualified enough to discuss the human brain or the psyche or the psychology behind it. But definitely, I think if you study human behavior, there's a lot of things that don't make sense, but they are just what they are. And I think your life experience shows that.
An equivalent to that would be when you're wearing full leathers, you'll feel a bit more safe and you'll take more risks. But if you do fall off, we're all going to fall on the same floor. So it's very like it gives you that slight bit of, it's giving me false confidence.
Yeah, 100%. It's masked, isn't it? It's masked confidence that masked Batman or Superman comes out in you. Yes. But at the end of the day, ultimately, it is good. It's for your own safety. But again, that's just you as an individual feeling like that. So imagine when somebody's looking at you. Yeah. So again, if I turn up to a motorcycle meet or a bike show, or let's just say a bike meetup, and I'm wearing shorts and a t-shirt and a motorbike, how would the others look at me compared to me wearing my full suit with an airbag on the back, with my shoey helmet, my full leathers? It's a psychological thing. You would think, okay, this guy knows his business. He might be a racer. He definitely might know how to get his knee down. He he knows his stuff if he's rolled up on that bike. If I come up in a t-shirt and shorts, I mean, for as you know, I could be an advanced rider. For as you know, I could be an ex-cop. But if I come in a shorts and t-shirt, you'll think, most likely he's probably not on his bike. He's robbed it. Correct? Would you agree?
Yes.
So I think in answer to your question, I think it does. It probably not directly ever, but I think silently there's always that voice in your brain as a leader or as a manager or as somebody who's in charge of employing somebody, whereby you do look at how the person has presented themselves, how they're dressed, how they come across, how they look, how they seem, because the energy they give off, I think that energy is contagious. And I think that does affect people. I do truly believe that, because I also believe we are all energy, and energy is volume, and that's another topic for another day.
I think what we'll do is we'll wrap this up slowly now by a few last couple of topics more about your focus. So at the moment, you're very focused and driven. So when you've got like an idea that you need to do something, for example, you want to get healthy, you'll fully lock down onto that and get into an area where you're actually concentrating 100% on that and then achieve it. Where do you get that from? Or is there some steps that people can take to get that focus onto achieving their goal?
Yes, so I think, again, the biggest thing that anybody needs to focus on when they are trying to achieve any goal is have a plan. I think failing, like the oldest saying in the book is, having a goal without a plan is only a wish. So I think when you have a goal, you need to have a plan which is going to be aligned with that goal. Because, we all want to become millionaires. We all want to become successful in our life. We all want to become, really, really good at our craft. We all want to continue learning, be the best piano players or the best racers or the best, whether we're business entrepreneurs or whatever line of work or field or sphere we walk on in life. But we never actually sit down and say, okay, I need to get to Z. I'm at A. How do I get to B first? We just want to get straight to Z. From A to Z, we just want to get straight to Z. We want to miss out all the middle part. And we don't mind if we stumble upon X or Y, but we still ultimately want to get to Z as quickly as possible. So I think the biggest problem, anybody trying to lose weight or trying to achieve anything, whether it's work, whether it's professional development, whether it's career development, whether it's personal relationships with friends, family, partners, spouses, I think the biggest thing they should do is have a goal and have a realistic, timely target. So being specific in what you want to do, being very set it accordingly to a smart objective you would set, which would be specific, which would be measurable, that you can measure, something which would be timely, and more importantly, something which is achievable and realistic. So, I think anybody looking to lose weight, the first thing they need to do is be very clear on what they want to achieve. How much do they want to lose? And If anybody says, oh, I have clients all the time come to me, Saj, we want to lose weight. We have a wedding in 7 weeks. Tell me what I need to do. I'm committed. And I immediately stop them. Immediately, I say, if you're immediate from the word go, your mindset is wrong. You know, because when it comes to losing weight or putting on muscle or becoming an athlete, or just like yourself now as an entrepreneur or as somebody who's gone into tech and business, your goals have to be for a different reason as to what your average person tells you. So for example, if you want to go and be a businessman to become rich, chances of you actually becoming rich are going to be very slim. If you start, just like with this podcast, we're not creating this podcast right now to suddenly become #1 bestseller on iTunes. You know, we're just running with it. We're just sharing ideas. We're just being two friends. You know, it's a nice, lovely excuse and a nice opportunity for us to catch up with each other, stay in contact, make use of the technology we have. And whatever comes of it would be a symptom. The success would be a symptom of that good intention. And I think that's what needs to be when people are losing weight. They need to be very focused on a specific goal, but in the short term, take a day at a time, be very clear on the goal of what they want to achieve, and then have a proper, realistic plan of how much they want to achieve it. How much they want it, but then how will they go about achieving that goal? And I think that plan is something which 90% of people trying to lose weight never ever have, and that's why they fail.
Definitely. I think we touched on a number of good topics today. It was really nice catching up with you. We're going to have a more deep dive in some of these topics because we've kind of scratched over a few of these areas. And I know there's a lot more you can share with me. So what we will do is we're going to say this is a nice little catch up and a podcast just updating you on this progress of importance of health, the fitness, the career development. We talked a little bit tangents there about motorcycling and little other things, but they all tie into that goal. If you're fit and you've got a good health, you'll want to do new things. And also listening to podcasts, there's loads of podcasts out there that are not really big, but I've listened to a few smaller podcasts that give you that little bit of a nugget of information like you've given today. You've given so many good tips that someone will be like, actually, you know what, that makes sense. And even a small change in your life, making you more healthy, will work wonders for longer periods of time. So what we'll do is I'll say thank you very much for joining me, and we're going to catch up on the next Zulf Talks podcast.
Thank you so much.
I'll pause that right now. What I'll do is I'll do another intro, because normally after we speak I can do another intro, and I'll make that at the start of the thing. So I'm going to introduce you. I'm going to do a little what we did, like a recap at the start, and then I'll bring you in, and then I'll cut it off, and then we can just I'll stop the recording. We can just have a catch up.
Yeah, sure.
One sec.
1 second, you know when you're going to start it, you put a bit of music in there.
We can do. I've got. Wait, can you hear this?
Wait, let me hear
that. You can't. But it's like a little bit of a jingle thing that welcome to the show and this new episode and all that stuff. You'll hear it in the proper thing.
Okay.
So if I do. Thanks for joining me on the podcast episode. Today we're going to be speaking to a good friend of mine that we've known for a number of years. He's moved abroad and he lives in Saudi. So we're going to catch up on a few topics around health, fitness and career development. We're going to touch on a few areas where we actually talk about the appearance of health, how people perceive health, how people that look healthy may actually not be healthy, as well as career development, what that person in the office that looks really fancy has advantage over that person that doesn't look as fancy. The perception around that, there's different ideas. We can argue quite a few different topics depending on what your belief is, but I think covering this today will be an interesting topic. So we're going to bring over to Saj and we're going to take that podcast episode as we go today. Hello Saj, how are you doing? You okay? There we go. Done. Okay, so I've got that. We've got an original version. I've got that version. Normally after we've talked, we know
I don't
what we
even know
about.
how you're doing this. I swear you're amazing, man.
Does it sound okay? No, it's okay.
Yeah, perfect.
So yeah,
Sorry,
what I normally do is
recording, was it?
I'll edit it out anyway.